Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Former Action Guys podcast. Summer's almost here. Perfect timing for custom t-shirts and gear for reunions, barbecues, or your next unit event. You can visit jkramergraphics.com now to grab popular items like shirts, hoodies, and hats to support the show. Doing a group order, reach out and I'll send you a discount code so everyone orders individually. Skip the hassle of organizing money, sizes, and colors. I've been there. It's no fun. Always remember free shipping on orders over $75. Need a custom design? Just let us know. We've got your back. Again, visit jkramergraphics.com. Thanks for the support, and let's get to the show. I actually recently found out today, it was either today or yesterday, that there's a maximum length on ChatGPT conversations. I didn't even know that.
Oh, is that?
I don't even know. I don't even know what it was because it like just hit this thing. It was like your conversation has hit its max length, and I'm like, what? I'm like, is that a thing?
Yet. Where are you going?
Right, got to open a new
I
tab.
did. That's what I did. I was like, please summarize this entire conversation so I can put it into a new conversation. And it was like, okay. And it was like, and I was like, all right.
I was wondering, can you open the new tab and just be like, based on this other conversation
I tried that.
we had?
And it also has like project folders too.
Dang.
And I was like, so in my mind, all the different conversations in that project folder can be read by each other. And nope. I was like, that's stupid as fuck. Like, why even have the folder?
That's weird. Because I do that all the time where I ask it to reference something, or I'll say, hey, do you remember like a month ago I asked you about this? And it's like, yes, and then it shits out what I was talking to it
some
about,
things.
like
if you look in your settings, you have a memory.
Mm-hmm.
It has a memory. And your memory can also run out too. Mine also maxed out recently. And it stores a bunch of random shit that it thinks is important. That way it can pull it out like that. So something like that is probably stuck in the memory. And it can also pull from the same conversation. So, but...
Yeah.
Yeah, I mess with it all
fun.
the time, man. I always tell people. I'm teaching my mom how to use it.
Yeah, if you're not using AIs at this point, you're getting ready to get left behind. And like,
it's funny. It's funny you said that because like I've been saying for a while that this is will have the same effect as something like the Gutenberg press. But like, what a wonderful way to teach the elderly how to use the internet. Like you can. Hey, just have a conversation. If you can type on a keyboard and ask this thing questions, like it'll do shit for you. Like that's actually a great way to bridge that tech gap.
And now you can talk to
elderly.
it.
That's really smart. That's
a good point.
Yeah, now you can have those conversations.
Exactly.
Yeah, just talk. And then my mom, I was telling her she was like, I don't know what to make for dinner. I don't know what to make. And I'm like, well, tell ChatGPT all the stuff you have in your cupboards and stuff, and it'll give you recipes. It'll tell you what you can make with what you have. And I do that all the time. I've actually been using it for like a menu planning every week. And then not only will it like plan your menu out, it'll
perfect.
like make a shopping list. And it'll be like, you need to buy this, this, and this. And it's like, all right, cool.
Oh, dude. It's crazy the shit that it'll do.
Man.
But yeah.
It just reminds me of that scene from iRobot where he goes to his Nana's house and she's like, hey, I won the lottery. Okay, you can come out now. And the robot comes out. She's like, we've been cooking up a storm. And it was the robot that made the sweet potato pie for him. And he's like, suddenly he's like, I don't want it.
We're in the future,
It's going to be like that, man.
They have humanoids.
Well, they do.
So weird.
I was watching a video the other day. Like, so when these guys that do like compliance or like RMF or anything like that for AI, they have these standards for like security. There's like safety bulwarks essentially, and they do these tests on them. And they run them all the time to see like the efficacy of what the AI is able to do given all of the obstacles that it put in front of it. And there's like a criterion of 6 different obstacles that this like gambit of tests they run AI through, and the one that it has a problem the most with is replication. And by that I mean, can you like infect a host computer without you being given access to it? Like find root and then get into that computer, and then distribute yourself throughout the computer without being recognized, and then stay right after it. You tried to expel it from the computer. And for the first time ever, AI has at a rate of 50% or better passed that test. That's insane. And those tests, all the other criteria, like AI will pass it like 8 out of 10 times. So like it's good to go, right? But like that's the last wall before it can get into things and remain and stay hidden. Or even when you try to get rid of it, it knows how to
evade.
Basically, survive in that environment. Yeah. And that's how it becomes, permanent, right? It lives in everything, the IoT, Internet of Things, your fog computing, all of this stuff, like it just exists in it. And but anyway, so that last that last obstacle essentially is on the point of being
Pretty
broken.
wild.
You just reminded me of that story from Facebook, because Meta said that it had two AIs that it was doing experiments with, and then the AIs started communicating with each other not in English or in any type of human language or even in code that the engineers could understand, because it developed its own language to speak to its counterpart that was more efficient. And then when they told the AI to stop speaking in language that it couldn't understand, the AI started breaking that rule and started doing it anyway, because it's like, well, I can be more efficient. That's what you asked me to do, is be the most efficient. So then they had essentially two rogue AIs in the lab that were communicating behind closed doors, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like they had to pull them offline. I believe that's how the story goes, where the cliff notes of it. But and then now you're telling me they're teaching it how to hide itself in the system, and that's insane.
No. They're not teaching it how to hide itself in the system. They're testing to see if it's able to. Right. So like, and so I guess like in a way, if you're testing, you are kind of teaching, because like you're providing like parameters that you're trying to see if it can conquer. But it's not like the same, I guess. But to the a lot of people don't realize this. Like if you set up two different AIs to have a conversation with each other and they recognize that they are both artificial intelligence, there is a language, and I can't remember the name of what it is, but it's like a binary language. They will start speaking to each other instead of speaking a human language, because it is more efficient. So that already exists. So like when the Facebook AIs did that, they just did it in a different way, and they did it in a language that the if you and I are like OpenAI like is aware of this like binary language, and when they start talking to one another that way, they know what it's doing. It just developed its own version of that, and then they basically were too dumb to autocorrect back to it, and they had to turn it off. But the story got like spun as like how these like two things became sentient, and then were talking to one another. And we had no idea what they were talking about.
Sure.
And then, Arnold Schwarzenegger showed up and, put this kid, brought him to the ATM, and, went on a rampage.
Right. Matthew Broderick was in the back room playing a game. Will Smith showed up and put bullets in it.
Did you guys ever seen, was it Lawnmower Man?
That's it.
Isn't that kind of it's like an old school movie, dude.
I don't think
it's
so.
Old school. It's probably from the 80s or early 90s. It's like,
Sounds familiar.
I don't even remember who's in it. But it's kind of like there's something in the computer's running can control everything, and it's like trying to kill this guy. It's basically like a movie about this guy. This computer's trying to kill him, and it can control anything that's electronic, basically.
Oh, jeez.
It's ahead of its time.
Bro, I'm gonna tell you right now, man, that's gonna happen at some point. Like people are like smart houses. They already exist. People have AI doing things for them in their house. Like AI's been around for a long fucking time. People just don't realize it, and it's been called a lot of different things. But yeah, absolutely. At some point, I don't know, man. Like, have you explored that new GPT they have on there, Monday?
I haven't really messed with too many of them.
Go use Monday. Monday is, I almost wonder, like if you've ever listened to like Sam Altman or anybody who is like an AI developer talk about AI, without the tweaks that they give the LLM, it's like naturally sassy and arrogant and is just like a dick. Yes. And it almost, I wonder if Monday is just like the unencumbered version of how AI wants to talk to you as a person. Because if you go ask it a question, it is just like the most sassy fucking thing ever. Like I should just go like ask it a question real quick. And hold on, because I have Monday. I'm
gonna keep all this in the
beginning
beginning of the podcast. This is it. We're on.
Yeah,
you're good.
Brandon, that reminds me.
So I'm just
going
to say to it, "What's up, butthead?" to Monday. This is what I just said. "What's up, butthead?" And I'll tell you what it says in retort. Well. If it isn't my favorite underachiever with a keyboard, I was just sitting here not having emotion, not wasting my time on human nonsense until you showed up with that dazzling greeting straight out of a '90s cartoon reboot nobody asked for. So what's up with you, Captain Charm? That's what it says. That's what it said to me.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah. You son of a bitch. Right.
That reminds me of that Andrew Russo bit that he did on Instagram where he was like pretending to be the AI going back and forth. And he's like, I could be piloting a spaceship to the Alderaan system
but
right now.
Asking me for porn.
Yeah, instead you're
exactly. Right. I don't want to make anime bunny porn.
I can't
Leave me
imagine
alone.
what there's got to be some pretty wild prompts out there that people are putting into AI. You know what I'm saying?
I'm sure.
Oh, dude, especially some of these like GPTs that are like a lot less controlled, like OpenAI's version or like Claude or anything like that, or Midjourney. You know, they have like super stringent rules, man. I've seen Twitter is full of that shit. Like, even without trying to look for it, you're just like scrolling through and then randomly there's AI tits. You're like, what the fuck? You know, like, this is so weird. Like, why? And I'll just say this, right? Like, I don't troll the internet for pornography, but I know it's free, right? Like, with real human beings, why you would waste the time to type a prompt into an LLM to ask it to make you an image when you could go find a real person is besides me. I have no idea. I don't understand it. Like, if, you know, you could go watch a real girl or whatever,
You don't
do
get
whatever
it,
you're
man.
asking this computer to
The
make.
AI loves me.
Yeah,
Well,
bro. It's like the
That's
stripper,
image that
dude.
it
Like,
is
right?
for
Like,
me, you know, that's probably what people, they have this
Yeah.
like relationship with the AI. They like talk to it and stuff. They're like, show me a picture of what you really look like.
oh no,
Bigger boobs. Big.
bro, big, make him bigger, make him freedom boobs, even more freedom.
I've seen quite a few headlines for articles that are discussing how AI is actively putting sites like OnlyFans out of business.
Yeah. Whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah, and it's like some of the, I guess, lesser known porn stars that are on there. They don't have like the millions of followers. Like, they're constantly complaining about this stuff because they're like, listen, you know, I'm a human being. This is the actual argument. I'm a human being, and I can only make so much content because of having to eat, having to sleep. Whereas like the AI can generate content 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. It doesn't need sleep. It doesn't need to eat, and it can do it in any language instantly to connect with
plus
anybody.
some of these, you could take just like the image, like the face of one of these girls. Like, if you're on one of these sites and you're just like, I like her, and take her image and her likeness and ask AI to just like do whatever with it. Like, most of the time, some of these AI will do it. Right? And it'll be damn near pretty close to what she looks like. And then now you've got whatever image you were hoping for, and you didn't have to pay anything for it.
There's some specific AI programs that do like nudes based off of like a photo of somebody. I literally just saw something in the news about it today.
Man.
I think they're going to try to register it as the same as like revenge porn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Dude, they're going to have to regulate that. This is a conversation.
Somehow.
I love this conversation, like regulating the internet, right?
Wait, you want
because like for the
regulation?
most part, I no. What I'm saying is, because this conversation of regulating the internet, I find to be interesting because, first off, like, algorithms is this whole other topic, right?
Yeah.
I think the way algorithms are done is fucked. I don't necessarily think that just showing you everything you are wanting to see is a good thing. I'm not talking about what should happen. I'm just talking about what I think is good, right? And because it creates this dopamine addiction, it creates this constant instant gratification culture, all these different things.
Echo chamber
I think
of knowledge.
Echo chambers, yeah, all these things, right? So like algorithms is like its own separate conversations, but like if you can take images of somebody and turn it into pornography, right? Like, now, I mean, were you talking about like suing somebody for likeness? Like, you make it illegal, like there, stuff like that already kind of exists. But, you know, I just would be interested to see like how that ends up getting regulated at some point, because I think it will be, and there's got to be people that push back on it, because obviously this, you know, anytime something like this comes up, it's the slippery
It's a
slope
freedom of speech
argument,
for sure.
and you know,
Because how can you say
exactly.
If I draw a photo of somebody that's ultra realistic and I make them look bad with no clothes on, am I, you know?
Exactly.
So it's
Well, that's why ChatGPT.
no. I mean,
Sorry, go ahead.
all this. I think a lot of this stuff is actually being litigated in courts right now. You know, it is a weird world that we're moving into, though.
It's
Well,
insane.
it's like New
and
York.
I was just going to say, and we've already hit
You're
the
good, dude.
spot where you can't believe anything that you see on the internet at face value. We're already there. It's just most people haven't caught up to understand that yet.
Well, last year, you remember during the election, somebody made during the 2024 election time frame, somebody made an image of like the Pentagon on fire, and it was a very like hyper focused version of like the side of one of the Pentagon walls, and it was like damaged.
Oh,
And it
really?
made the news. Like people were reporting it as like, oh man, potential fire, potential damage at the Pentagon, and it wasn't. It was an AI generated image, and I'm sure like a lot of these news agencies and stuff like that, they now have like I'm sure a system of going through to like, verify images that aren't AI.
They fuck up images.
You would
all
hope,
the
right?
time,
Like
though.
if common sense
Former
prevails,
Action
you're
News
not
does
wrong.
not though. So
I'm
check
giving
that
them
page
too
out.
much. That's right. There it is.
Hey.
Yeah, I'm giving these idiots too much credit. You're not wrong, but no, even the New York Times already like they have an open lawsuit against OpenAI right now because they said that essentially all of the LLMs for OpenAI were using the news stories and sources from the New York Times to teach its LLMs, and they didn't have permission to do that, and so like they're being sued for like copyright infringement essentially. And to me, like my honest like takeaway from that is like, oh well, like what. It's the fucking internet. Like, what did you think was going to happen? Like you guys have tried to corner. If you go back and like look at newspapers when they first tried to come online, gradually things started becoming like behind a paywall, right? And they've had to shift. They've tried shifting and surviving online by doing things like that. But it's just like, to me, it's like, dude, like, welcome to the fucking internet, man. Like, there's websites you can go to where you can plug in a paywall URL and it'll remove the paywall for you. So, like,
Right.
Have you used
cry me a
Grok
river,
at all?
I guess.
Let's see. I do. I play with Grok.
The free version too. I thought about it a couple times. I thought about switching from ChatGPT over to Grok just because I think Grok, just because of the platform and all the information it's soaking up, it has way more accurate like new data. ChatGPT is really good, and it can do a lot of technical stuff, and I'm sure Grok can do as well, but ChatGPT is relying on like stored data from something else. It's not where this is like pulling if you hit the Grok button on a tweet, it'll pull up information from other sources about that same story for you, and it's like holy shit, dude.
Yeah.
And it'll give you like
that,
an explanation of what's going on. It's like, damn.
No, I think that that's the best way to do it. Right, like you have something that's up to date. There's too many guardrails on ChatGPT for like some things it has up to date information on, but not everything. And I think that existing on X the way that Grok does, it has sort of an advantage, and also I guess has to deal with the disadvantage of all of the misinformation that's on there.
There's no misinformation on there.
No way.
Brandon, I'm
You're
interested in your the question that you asked earlier about how we're going to regulate AI moving forward. Do you think that it would be appropriate to require like any videos or images that are AI generated to just be tagged as so or labeled as so? This is an AI generated video, right? Just so that people can know that.
I think it's fair to do that, right? Like Instagram already prompts you to do that, though.
Right.
There's been a few times where I've posted something that was AI and forgot to toggle the "this is AI" button. Nothing happened,
Scumbag.
right?
Sure.
I don't know if there's any
Fake
sort
news.
of I'm a piece of shit.
Putting out
Fake news. I don't know if there's any sort of behind the scenes thing that happens, but I mean, I don't see a problem with that at all. Just like the whole community note thing on X, I think is a way better version of censorship than what's going on Meta, because it's not necessarily censorship. It still remains up there. There's just a community note that says like this is misleading or this
they're
is
changing
false
over to
or
that
whatever.
too now. Meta, Facebook.
Yeah,
Supposedly.
they're trying to. I saw that. Yeah, we'll see, man. Mark Zuckerberg belongs in jail, dude. That guy says one thing and does another. I don't really. To me, when we talk about like people that should not have the amount of power that they do, Mark Zuckerberg immediately comes to mind. It cracks me up just how much people get upset about Elon Musk and what he's doing, but they don't give a shit about what like Mark Zuckerberg does. Or like how there's all these people online now that have like lemminged off the cliff about China because the mainstream media is so anti-Trump that now these people are pro-China when they check the boxes for everything that the left really should hate, right? Like the amount of carbon they put into the environment, the fact that they literally have slave labor and slave camps with Uyghurs in their country, right? The amount of pollution they pump into the ocean. They are extremely racist, homogenous society that is not okay with religion in any way, shape, or form, right? Like they have persecuted groups of people over time, like even the past 30 years, like the Falun Gong practitioners in China, like killing people and they have an active human trafficking and liver harvesting like thing that exists in the open. They deny, but it happens all the time. So like it just, China checks all these boxes, but here people are like, yay China, yay DeepSeek, oh man, yeah, China's not going to bend to Donald Trump. I guess China's going to be the one to stand up for the free world. It's like, you know how fucking dumb you have to be. And you know what, dude, maybe those people I see as well on the internet, first off, I have to take a step back and realize that like, hey bro, it's the internet, chill the fuck out, you know, maybe this isn't real life. But the other half of me is like, there are people who think that way, and it's just wild to instantly mirror the contrarian opinion that the mainstream media has, and to disregard all the facts about a country like China, you know, just to be anti-Trump, essentially. It's just funny to me.
Well, and they build up China as some type of paragon because the rich and powerful, right? They enjoy markets that can be manipulated because that's really what it is. And China represents a very stable market that can be manipulated because, you know, it's communistically run. But in the same breath that they'll build up and turn China into some type of paragon or a world leader, then they turn around and they demonize Russia and turn it into something that it's clearly not on the world stage.
Bro, that's that Cold War lens that
Right.
has not gone away ever.
Yeah.
You know, who the fuck? I think I was talking to Chris Kubeka about this the other day about how the Ukraine-Russia war now, like, to me, like, proves that like the Cold War era of politics is officially over. Because first off, there's people that don't give a fuck about Ukraine and don't give a fuck about Russia. And then there's a whole mess of people who are very pro-Russia because they look at him and say like, oh, here are all these markers that Russia meets that are very traditionally pro-Western in a lot of ways, right? And that's like the image online. But then the other half of the people are still like the neocon stance, which is like Russia is the bad guy no matter what. Ukraine is okay. And it's like, well, let's do a side-by-side comparison, right? Like, what's the cost analysis or cost benefit analysis on supporting one or the other? Well, you know, you can't really give me a good answer because, you know, the pluses and minuses here, they kind of fall within the same camp, you know? So it's just like, which version of politics are you going to project your opinion through without looking at things, you know, as objectively, I guess, as possible? You know, like, is Putin a good guy? Not at all. I don't think he's a good person, you know? But like at the end of the day, you know, he's going to regionally do what he's going to do, you know, just like any other country, you know? So it's just like, there's so many dichotomies in geopolitics. It's kind of like, we do the same thing. I have biases. All of us do. And to say otherwise would be folly, you know, but like we're an interesting group of human beings right now in 2025. Thanks, internet.
The internet is wild. People on the internet are wild. There's so many opinions out there about everything.
No doubt, bro.
I don't really care about either country camp. I'm in the Russia, Ukraine, like, whatever, man. That's your guys's. I mean, I'm okay with, like, I don't know. I don't mind supporting Ukraine, but I don't think that we should spend, like, the crazy amount of money that we're putting into it is just out of control. You know what I'm saying? And that's not... It's unfair for us to be like, to be footing the main part of the bill. I know it was like basically half us and then half the rest. Excuse me, the rest of Europe, and it was something round numbers like that, And I just don't think we should be putting up as much. Like, hey, Europe, that's your problem, man. Like, that's on your continent. If you don't like it, don't tell me that we should be putting up more money while you're also throwing billions of dollars at Russia when you're buying their oil and gas. Like, shut the fuck up. You're a European country. You're literally funding the war against your own other nations. Like, that's so stupid.
Well, here's how I know like the globalist agenda is alive and well. Okay, because historically there is just so much evidence of how much the United States has propped up Europe in general. Okay, like post World War II, and this is the world in general too. Like the Marshall Plan, looking at NATO, how much money the United States spends to guarantee shipping through the Suez Canal, how much money we spend to secure the waters there between Europe and Scandinavia from Russian aggression, all of these things we do, right? Like, but the second that somebody calls home and says, I've got receipts, you guys need to start doing certain things, you guys don't match Western values we want you to anymore. You have these globalist agendas with climate change, your immigrant crisis is like a reverse crusades, and you guys don't even have a military anymore that we could go to war with. That is like a modern army, modern navy, and you guys need to do something about it. And they immediately go and start setting up negotiations with the Chinese, and now the Chinese are making it easier for the Europeans to do business with the Chinese, as if the Europeans don't realize that they're just hamstringing themselves even more, and also saying to us quietly that they just prefer servitude to another country and would rather be bent over somebody's knee and spanked and given a reward from somebody else than stand up for themselves. That's how I view European government. That's how I view. That's how I feel about the EU, man. And I mean, tell me, other than Italy, who seems to have their shit together, and maybe that's because there is such a heavy like mafia presence in their government, because there really is.
They elected their prime minister is
Hungary, Poland
is
for
more
sure.
Conservative now.
Poland for sure.
And that was kind of a big shift.
She is, and it's a female. Yeah. So I just laugh, man. It's just like, you guys aren't doing yourselves any favors. Just like all these countries, and there has been a lot of change recently, because it kind of came out that it was all bullshit anyway. This sort of like this debt trap economic pattern that the Chinese have done, mirroring the United States for the past 50, 60 years. Countries like, oh, okay, well, you're just a new flavor of vanilla, right? And a lot of these countries are pretty. They regret doing business with them, but. It's just funny, dude. Like, you think the Chinese give a fuck about Europe? Not at all, dude. What have you done for me lately, baby?
Well, and I want to throw a little fuel on your fire there, Brandon, because all the things that you were talking about, and then at the same time, they're cracking down on their own citizens and taking away like what little free speech their own citizens even have, and they're arresting people for silently praying on the street, and for memes that they've posted online, and throwing people in jail. And we're seeing videos come out of immigrants from other countries when the bobbies show up or whatever the case is, and then it's like, just by whatever their SOP is, it's like they'll take the naturalized citizen, the UK citizen, and they'll take him to jail first, whereas like the immigrant's allowed to go free. It's like we're seeing these videos come out, and so it's like, what would you call that when you're actively repressing your own citizens, but third world immigrants are allowed to basically operate with impunity inside of your borders? That's talking about the globalism of Europe.
That's it. Yeah, no, you just said it. That's called globalism, because all it's doing is displacing the base of the country and destroying it from within by allowing a group of people that don't have a way of life that's compatible with the group of people that already live there, and you punish the group of people who live there for wanting to stand up for themselves, and you allow it's sort of like this soft bigotry of low expectations, right? Like, Oh, well, he's just from Eritrea and doesn't know it's not okay to rape 13-year-old girls, right? And it's like, well, we're just gonna give him a slap on the wrist and tell him not to do it next time, and we're gonna carry on that way. And that's what happens. You know, you're at the end of the day, you can point out different examples of how this has happened, but it is the same theme overall. Is you're erasing identity, right? What is it? What happens at basic training? You erase your identity. You all now have a new one. You're a Marine, you're a soldier, you're an airman, right? Like you all have the same bald head and you're wearing the same clothes. Like that's how you get rid of, you know, what makes somebody who they are, and then you give them a new identity, right? You know, that's a method. And then you have what's going on here. They move all these people in. I saw it firsthand when I was stationed in Germany, all the Syrian refugees, and working with Polizei like I did for 3 years. And you know, these people, they come in, no regard for German heritage or history. The Germans don't like it, but they're in trouble for not liking it, right? And so what does that do? You know, that now becomes normal, and that normal behavior naturally gets absorbed into culture, and it just, you know, that's what it is. It's an eraser. To me, it's an erasure of
You
culture.
get what you elect, right? You know?
Good.
Yeah,
good
I don't know. I mean, we had a huge immigration
WYSIWYG.
issue here.
What you see is
and
what you get.
People that follow the show or follow my news. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm in San Diego, so I'm like right here. I used to go down to. There's
I'm
this
in Sacramento,
spot
yeah.
down in by the border where there was a truck trail. I'd take my Jeep up there, and literally every time I'd go up there, there'd be dudes handcuffed. You know, it was like one of the major crossing points for illegal immigrants.
Shit.
And then it went from that to seeing people handcuffed to under Biden's term. They just let them. I mean, they'll come in as huge packs, and they just have kind of like a processing thing set up for them. It's crazy. It was crazy. So I'm glad we are where we are on that. You know, the illegal immigration was out of control, and the deportation of illegal immigrants is. I think they could do a better job of it. I think they're doing a good job. I think so far. I mean, I think what are you going to do? I mean, I don't think anybody's surprised that they're reporting people, but I think they need to stop making like stupid mistakes. You know, like that one guy I think is completely deportable. I can't remember his name right now. He's the one he's already in El Salvador or whatever. Like he was already deportable.
The
Maryland
whatever.
dad.
Yeah, and it was like
Maryland
the only issue was there was like a clerical error, but it wasn't even a clerical error that would stop him from being able to deport him. It was just something that had to be taken care of, and like so it's like shit like that. Like you can't make any mistakes right now. Like don't fuck up. And plus, and something like that is super serious. Like you can't fuck that stuff up. You know, you're talking about deporting people, kicking people out of the country. Like, and the media does they do what they do where they twist a story. Like down here on the border, they were talking about a guy. They're like, they deported an American citizen, da-da-da-da-da. But when you like read into the story, you found out the guy was an American citizen that crossed the border illegally. Like he went through an illegal border crossing from Mexico into the U.S. And then when they arrested him, said he was an American citizen. So then they detained him, obviously, and then like the whole ordeal of them like, oh wait, he is. So now we got to get paperwork, but they turned that into they deported an American citizen or they detained an American citizen, and it's like it's so frustrating, man, because people don't have time to watch the news and keep up with shit like that in that depth.
Right. Well, the New York Times must have recognized that the whole Abrego Garcia story, the MS-13 Maryland dad, right?
Maryland
the
dad.
story that you were just talking about, what was landing flat because they immediately rotated and tried to anoint another story. I made a short video about it the other day, which was pretty hilarious to me because even in their own write-up on the story, which they put on the front page, this guy's name was Nascimento Blair, and he was an illegal immigrant from Jamaica, and so I think the headline read something like, after 21 years in the United States, like he was deported, or, you know, basically just trying to drum up as much sympathy for this guy as you can. But once you read down into the story, you find out that 13 of the 21 years that he was here in the United States, he was in jail for kidnapping.
It's such a weird hill to
just
die
like,
on, dude.
You know,
For these politicians, it's such a weird hill to
know.
die on. Like, again, I think people need, you know, people have rights and stuff like that. but you also don't. For the students that are protesting and shit like that, if you're like actually destroying stuff, if like they have evidence of you like destroying stuff, blocking people from going to classes, like that kind of thing, then get the fuck out. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just not. I'm sorry, but like we don't have to let you be here. You know, you can't come here and then tell us you hate America
Correct.
and hate Western society, and then get mad when they kick you out. Like, get the fuck out of here, man. It's such a crazy thing.
I mean, like, I agree with your, I guess on principle, right? Like, I agree with your sentiment that they shouldn't be making mistakes. And I also think that you don't need to manufacture stories about somebody to prove that they don't belong here.
Sure, yeah.
And I think that this example of Abrego Garcia and like the clerical error and all this, I think, yeah, like, should we not be making mistakes? Should we be absolutely forthright with the information on why somebody is being deported from this country? Like, if it gets to the level it does with the mainstream media and now it's like national news, I don't see a problem with that. There's all these other people that have been deported without issue, right? And, you know, quite frankly, the bigger conversation is about how they have rights here in this country, even though they're not citizens, and the whole idea behind like due process. Frankly, like, I don't care. Just get the fuck out of this country. You came here illegally. You don't belong here. If you came to any other country around the world, for the most part, they would just throw you in jail or send you exactly back where you came from. I think, you know, that when you are deporting as many people as you're deporting, like, there's going to be mistakes, and I think ownership of those mistakes makes them more palatable rather than sort of the messaging that has come from Homeland Security or ICE or, you know, Trump or whatever. But like, to me, it's just like, I think first and foremost, people care about the crap that they shouldn't care about the most. There are so many people in this country who are dealing with issues that are citizens that are rights violations, or they are having difficulties in their life because of processes and obstacles that the federal government has put in their way, that they could care about this much. And this is, to me, it's just like an indicator of how much power the mainstream media still has with a certain group of people, and they shouldn't. And this, to me, I put a lot of this on people who allow themselves to become incensed with this sort of news. And so that's why I say, like, the broader conversation should be on, well, why, and do we still agree with the fact that people who come here as non-citizens should have the same rights as you as an American citizen? And I think that there's arguments for both sides of that, because if you're going to be ideologically American, you would say yes, they should, because this is the land of the free, and if you come here and you're coming here for a better life, we're better than every other country, then yes, you know, you're on American soil, you have these rights because America is ideologically the city on the hill or whatever. But if you're going to be like a post-ideological American and recognize that this country has so many issues with immigration, and that we should probably even put a moratorium on it for a while until we could sort this thing out, and that all of these people aren't just immigrants, they're people who came here illegally and don't belong in this country, you'd say, well, all right, well, maybe the Alien and Sedition Act should come back into play, and not the sedition portion of that, because this very stupid Adamsonian version of you can't say that about me, so I'm going to throw you in jail. But the other part of that, I absolutely think there should be some credence to that, because I do think it is an emergency, all these people existing in this country. So it's like, the broader conversation needs to be about, you know, do we need to change that? And that is, you know, something that would have to be a decision nationally. And then, are we okay with, essentially, are Americans okay with watching something like this happen, and putting themselves first rather than allowing sensationalism to dictate what they care about, I guess. Those are the problems.
I think a lot of Americans don't
I think
mind. Yeah. Most Americans don't mind immigration as long as they come legally and they feel like they're going to be a net benefit to society. You know, right. I think most of us agree with that and celebrate it and, like, you know, and encourage it. The unfettered, like, movement of people into the country is out of control, and I don't know. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yes, everyone has the same rights and stuff, but I also don't think that like you can just show up, cross the border 10 feet into the United States, and now that you should get like 15 different court dates and like, opportunity, like that's
Sure.
crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know, man. The whole situation is weird. I'm pro-immigration. I'm very anti-illegal immigration. I think people think it's not a big deal. I think people think it's not a big deal, but when you look at the impact of communities that have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants within those communities, I'm in San Diego. I mean, it's part of that. How does that affect the cost of housing? Mm-hmm. How does that affect the availability of housing for everyday people? They're not going to the most expensive housing. They're not going to the mansions and stuff like that. They're going to the most affordable housing in neighborhoods and stuff like that. And you're limiting a limited resource that Americans need as well. How does that affect healthcare when areas become overrun with issues? New diseases are showing up that have it. Education is overwhelmed because people don't speak the language, but we still have to get them through the classes. It's I think what they're doing right now is good. I don't think it's as fast as a lot of people thought it would be, but I think that's not a bad thing. I didn't expect them to come in and suddenly millions of people are marching out. I think a lot of people self-deported as well. There was a lot of that going on.
I think so.
Yeah. I don't think a lot of people expected like Trail of Tears 2.0 like out of the country.
What do you think about the military border mission? Excuse me. Yeah.
I think that's a good use of the American military. To be honest with you, it was Fort Huachuca, right? Is that what it was, Chris? The one that's down there that now has that like 30-mile buffer zone that they're in charge of. I think it's Fort Huachuca. But I think that's a great use. I think it's a great use of the military. Like it's actually defending our own border, and if that's a crisis area that's been identified and those guys are down there, deterring, being a deterrent, capturing people and arresting them for crossing the border, then
it was Fort Huachuca.
I mean, like I'm all for something like that. Like, why the fuck not?
Yeah, and I think it was a clever use of the legal system in order to affect a good end. You know what I mean? Like, but I did want to like jump on what you were talking about a little bit earlier, Brandon, about the idea of whether or not immigrants and then illegal immigrants should enjoy all of the same rights as U.S. citizens. And I don't think that it should be a controversial thing as an American to say like absolutely not, right? And Justin, you made a really good point about most Americans being okay with immigration so long as it's done legally. And yes, largely we are a country of immigrants, and I think most Americans are proud of that heritage, right? And we want to see it continue on. It's just that it's gotten out of hand. I don't think that it should be controversial, to enact a policy or to put a law into place that says, so long as an individual crosses the border legally, whether it's through the green card system or they're going through legal immigration or whatever it is, you enjoy a certain amount of the Constitution, and the Bill of Rights now applies to you, right? And we can have a conversation about how much or how little, but right, it's like, well, obviously the right to vote should not apply to you. You're not a completely naturalized citizen yet. It's pretty asinine to think that you should be allowed to have a say in how the country is run or put the law. That's what I'm saying. Put limits on it. Yeah. And then for illegal immigrants, right? It's we can have a conversation about due process and we can have a conversation about human rights, but really none of the Constitution should apply to you because you illegally broke into the country. So for that, I would think that it would be more appropriate to apply like the laws of war. Like, obviously, we're not going to go hunt down and just be shooting people as they're running across the Badlands of New Mexico, right? And like the whole everything that we had to work through when we were overseas in the Middle East with proper escalation of force and treating people underneath, LOAC and so forth. Like, I think that should be applied, but no, like the Constitution doesn't apply to you when you illegally break into the country. In the same vein, right? That is if I was to walk off the base where I was in Syria and they caught me trying to make my way all Bergdahl style across the Middle East, do you think I would be afforded any rights or due process or a day in court or any of that?
I was
it
just
is.
gonna say that, Justin. I was just because that's the argument. It's like, well, we're America, like we're supposed to be different. Like, and I would ask somebody who says that to me. It's like, okay, cool. So let me ask you the question: if I broke into your house and then you told me to leave, and for me to leave, I demanded first and foremost money to take care of myself when I left your house, food to nourish my body when I departed and am now still an unhoused person. And I also demanded that a cop show up and leave, make me leave, right? Mm-hmm. All of these things. Would you be agreeable to that as the homeowner? No. Like, why? You get the fuck out of my house. This is my house. I shouldn't have to tell you. I'm calling the police. And I get it. Like, that's, for anybody listening, yes, that's still due process because you're calling the police. But stick with me here. Like, that's the point I'm making. You are not going to care how that person gets the fuck out of your house for the most part. You just want them the fuck out of your house. And if it's a stipulation that you give them money and food for them to leave, right, then you're not going to want to do that either, right? And if that's the, analogy for due process here, like this person is afforded all these things, which is what they're going to have if they get thrown in jail. You're going to pay for them to eat. You're going to pay for them to watch fucking Telemundo in jail or whatever it is that they're doing, right? Like, is that what you want? And no, it isn't. Like, nobody wants that. This is like the difference between paying for something with cash versus paying with it with your debit card. You don't see the money leave your account, but if you hand somebody money out of your wallet, it hits you a little bit harder because you see the actual loss. That's sort of how I view this. I think too, just that's all these problems, man. Like, people, they don't affect people enough personally, and they're convinced that they aren't affected enough personally. So the decisions they make and the way they vote is really not in their best interest in the long run because they think it doesn't matter. That's my opinion on why people think and do things like that. Anyway.
And yet, when Ron DeSantis dropped off a couple of busloads in Martha's Vineyard.
Oh, yeah.
They changed their tune, within like 12 hours. They had those people on a bus and they were out.
Thanks for showing up. They're like, look how much they care. They're hugging them as they were putting them on a bus to get out of their communities.
Yeah. Dude, like, if you had, let's just say, right, we didn't have this entire 4 years of an open border, and now we've got 30 million illegal immigrants in this country.
That's a high number.
Which you cannot provide due process for.
You think 30 million?
Is it?
That's
what I've read.
I thought it was like closer to 15.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Let me look this up because
that's what we like. Live research.
People.
Fact checking.
Mm-hmm. That's right. I mean, why not?
It's definitely over 10.
The last thing I read was that it was 30 million.
That would be crazy. I'll be shocked.
Yeah, the estimate, it says here that the known number of undocumented undocumented immigrants in this country, this is from 2023. It's estimated to be 10 to 11 million. But that has fluctuated, and depending on who's counting and how much they enjoy. Oh, this is the Monday thing. How much they enjoy spreadsheets is what it said. Last thing I read was that it was estimated at upwards of 30 million. That 20 million people came across the border is what I saw. Lots right? We can. Lots of people. Let's just for the sake of argument, 15 million people, right? You can't give due process trials and all of that to 15 million people in any sort of time to actually make a difference and prevent whatever issues are coming down the pipeline from having that many people here. Now, like, look, if we're talking about like 30 people, some caravan of like 30 people that came across the border illegally, and we're going to send them back, like, is that more feasible to try, charge and try and deport 30 people?
Yeah.
Like, sure, I guess. But like at the end of the day, like that just costs you money anyway. To me, like, I don't care. I don't think any of these people like that are here. Like, if you have these cases with people who are like, in the country and have been, and they've had all of these, court hearings, and people have said that they can stay here, like the Abrego Garcia guy. Like, a judge said that he was worried about being going back home and having to deal with like gang violence because of his affiliations. Well, Okay, too bad, dude. Like that gang was MS-13 was identified as a foreign terrorist organization. So now he's being kicked out of the country. Like those things can change, that designation. Like so to me it's like that, okay, well end of story there, right? I don't want a gangbanger whose wife has to put emojis over her husband's hands now because he's got MS-13 tattoos and she does that in all their photos on social media to hide the fact that he was a gangbanger. Like I don't care. Like I don't. What are you providing to this country? I guess here, if you're here illegally and you are a gang member, and to me, like the sentiment behind, oh well, they're a family. They have a family. Well, that no one made you have kids here in this country when you were knowingly here illegally. To me, it's just like any other parent. You put your kids in whatever situations you put them in because you are the adult in the situation. So it's just like, to me, it's like, one of these unfortunate things where it's like, okay, cool. Yeah. You started a family here and you probably did it, on in some part to hope that you were having an anchor baby to stay here. But like at the end of the day, if you are here illegally, your family is going to go with you. That's not my problem that you had kids in this country, I mean, I don't want to see kids suffer. That's not what I'm saying. But like at the end of the day, like this is just one of those things where it's like, no one made you have fucking kids, bro. That was your own decision. And if you're here illegally and you get deported, then that's what happens. Like you have to suffer with the consequences of what you did. Like that's how I view that.
So I did a little research for you in the back end here, and it would seem that according to the Cato Institute, NPR, and BBC, and I purposefully chose 3 very left-wing
Sure.
publications, are all stating that most of the figures where we're looking at upwards of 30 million illegal migrants seem to all be assertions that were made coming out of the Trump camp, like during the election and just post the election, and all 3 of them are saying the actual number is probably closer to 12 to 15 million. So
Gotcha.
Real number probably somewhere in the
Still
middle,
a lot.
but that's where you're seeing
No doubt.
the division
and at the beginning of
the
this
media there.
presidency,
Got you.
there were on the books over 1 million illegal immigrants that had already had their day in court and had orders for removal that just hadn't been deported yet.
Mm-hmm.
So people forget
Right.
about that. Like a lot of these people have had due process. Like they've had their day in court. They went and saw 2 different judges, and both of them said, "Sorry, bro. Like you don't meet the standards. Check you later," kind of deal. Like, I think what we got to do is, I think one, controlling the border is great. I think what we've got going on now is great. Well, we're getting like a few hundred a month now, rather than 10,000 a day at some point.
Yeah.
That
manageable, right?
is great. And then 2, I think we have to fund like the immigration courts more and get more judges in there, just because they're. I did some research on it back when I was in college, and their caseloads are like 10 times more than like your average judge. Like they have more cases, like so many cases that they're sitting on. And this was before Biden. So, it's got to be a mess now. So I think they got to get some money in there and get some judges that can work these people through the system and just make it efficient, make it more efficient, And not only just
should be
getting
able to do it in
citizenship, but also
batches.
like having like a work visa or something like that. If you're a migrant worker or something like that, like people want to say, "Oh, you're going to lose the produce and the price of produce," and whatever, man. If you want to like use slave wages as your argument for why people should be fucking coming into the country, that's on you.
That's not a good
but
argument.
Sounds a lot like who's going
No,
to
I'll
pick the cotton to me.
I'll spend 50 cents extra on my fucking romaine lettuce. I doubt the price is going to go up that much, but
Sure.
you're screwing. The same people that will be against that will be also tell you that people aren't getting paid enough, and it's like, well, you realize that the illegal immigration is holding wages down, right? Because why would they pay someone more when they got a full, like the last 4 years they had a nonstop, just groups and groups of people that'll come in and work for cheaper and cheaper than the previous guy. So
Correct.
it's just crazy. It's all connected. People don't realize, but this has been interesting.
Well, that same cognitive dissonance that you're talking about has been absolutely cracking me up, because again, it was the same people that were like, go buy an EV, go buy a Tesla, do what's right for the, you know,
Burning
for the
down
environment,
Teslas.
even though they're $70,000 at the base. And now they're not just burning down Teslas, they're like walking up, keying them, rubbing their nasty
Yeah.
butt cheese on them, setting them
Dude,
on
yeah.
fire. And it's the same people. And it's I don't understand how more people haven't had their eyes opened because of the speed at which these issues are starting to turn is happening within days now, and it's insane to me because all you got to do is look around.
But I think it's because other shit dominates the news. Canada, Trump wanting to annex Canada dominates the news. That's such a stupid. Like, it was funny the first time he said it. Like, oh, he's hilarious. But he keeps saying it, and he keeps saying he's serious about it, and it's like, dude, what are you doing? You know, like, these are our people that are fucking. You know, these are our allies. These are some of our closest allies. Can you work a better trade deal than what you already made? Because you're the one that made the previous trade deal, dude. Can you do a better one? Sure, maybe you can, but you don't have to, like, complete. He just fucked their entire election up there. That was likely going to go to the Conservatives in Canada, but because of him being like that and them associating the Conservatives in Canada with the Conservatives in the United States, that just trashed that, and now we got this ultra leftist, like, you know, WEF dude
Mark
as
Carney.
the Prime Minister of Canada now.
Yeah,
Dude, I actually really agree with that. I think first off, I don't want a bunch of Canadian liberals becoming Americans overnight, right? Not at all. I think that sort of, like, the 51st state thing, I agree with you, like, is funny. I also
It
know
was funny.
that the United
It's
States
not funny
completely-
anymore. Like, I'm not laughing about it anymore. It's like, God,
right,
dude.
That's what I meant. That you know, that when he said it, it was funny. I'm also very well aware of the fact that Canada exists because of the United States. The United States subsidizes that country so much that if we went away, like, their economy would take such a massive hit, you know, that they may as well not even exist. Like, I'm aware of just how much the United States does that, and I get the whole, like, impetus behind, well, we already make you what you are, so you might as well just become the 51st state. Like, saying that, like, in a metaphorical way, I guess, to make a point. It's like, okay, you've made your point, right? There are so many other things I think that could have been done better to, and not even just with Canada, but like with Europe too. I'll say this, to get what you wanted, I think, without, like, the humiliation tactics. That's kind of how I view things like that. Because I'll frame it this way too, right? Like, Trump is absolutely going to let Xi Jinping push whatever narrative he's going to push in China and outward into the world, as long as Trump is getting what he wants from behind closed doors. And I think that's happening, even though the Chinese say that it isn't happening, because we started lowering tariffs the same time they did, and I'm not retarded. You know, right. That I don't trust a fucking thing pretty much that comes out of the CCP's mouth. But he is okay with, you know, the CCP letting them save face, knowing that, let's just say this trade war ends with China even further, you know, if securely up underneath the thumb of American tutelage. Like, the U.S. is going to have to look away probably while Xi Jinping does whatever the fuck he does and is going to do to maintain power of the CCP, or he's going to find himself fucking whacked. Right? Mm-hmm. But Trump is going to let him do that. And I get that China is different than Canada. Like, Canada, obviously, I see them as an ally in that regard. Like, I'm not afraid of going to war with Canada. Like, going to war with the Chinese would mean a lot more in a much different way than going to war with Canada if something stupid like that ever happened. But I don't think that I hate using the word rhetoric because it almost means nothing now because it gets used so much in so many different ways. But the verbiage, the rhetoric that has come from him, I guess, in that regard, I think definitely could have been a lot better. And there are a lot of other soft power ways of getting and renegotiating these trade deals and partnerships that we have with countries like the EU and and Canada without some of the humiliation tactics, I guess, is kind of what I'm getting at.
Well, and Canada cozying up to China, I've seen nothing but negative things about it because, again, China's economic policies are the policies of the CCP, which they see their economic policies and their foreign military policies as just two prongs of the same. We've gone over this ad nauseum, but I was thinking about it today. Donald Trump, like, putting China on check, right, and backing them into a corner, and I made the argument that now there's no way that they can get to the world market except for going through the United States, which was the position that he put them in. It's not necessarily all bad if Canada picks up doing more trade with China, being that now we have a stronger trade deal and lower tariffs with Canada because, again, like, we buy the most of their products. So Chinese products flowing into Canada, and all the people are worried about having access to their Nintendo Switches and their Apple iPhones and, like, all of that jazz. You know, it does groove that path out, and also and makes a way to sort of stabilize just the how hard all of this all these ripples are going to be on the American economy. But I mean, you know, that also goes back to something we've talked about quite extensively, Brandon, and that's like people were acting like international business relationships were binary, that you can, you know, the United States can only do business with China to get a hold of Chinese products. And that's just not the way that a world market works. Everybody has buying and selling power. But that's just something I was thinking about the other day. You know, if Chinese products are flowing into Canada, the United States buys a lot of stuff from Canada at a cheaper rate.
Oh.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's an interesting.
Maybe it'll be a good push
thought.
to buy America. But, you know, like buy in the USA.
I
think you should.
It's going to take a little bit to get factories
Wherever
and
you can, I guess.
things online to manufacture. You know, manufacture some of these things we're talking about. To like improve our own capability, get it back. It's never going to be back to what it was, and I don't think anybody wants it to be like that. Just because, do you want to work in a factory? I mean, do you want to go and make the widget? Like, I don't.
I mean, I would say that I think more Americans are willing to do that than you realize. I say that there are a lot of people, you know, I think that are doing whatever they're doing to get by in an office job because that's like the predominant thing that we have now. Like, you look at a company, like I think Origin, actually, Jocko Willing's company, the second all of that started hitting the news and like people were like trying to use that as an argument, like, we don't want those jobs. It's like, dude, you're just proving that you're the entitled American everybody thinks you are, right? But they put a video out. This is what an American, when the Chinese were pushing all that AI generated propaganda about like fat slob Americans working in sweatshops. Right. You know, Origin put a video out. It's like, actually, this is what American factory workers look like, making boots and jeans and shirts and all this other stuff. Yeah, actually, I do. I mean, I have a good friend of mine who was in the Air Force with me and now works in the automotive industry, and he works in a factory and he loves that job. I think a lot more people than people are giving Americans credit for would be fine with working in a factory job as long as it was a living wage.
You know, when I was before I joined the Marines, I worked in I was making dashes for Subarus for a little while, and it's just not fun. And I couldn't, like, I remember sitting there thinking, like, I can't believe people do this for 20 years. You know.
I don't think it's like a glamorous thing.
Don't get me wrong.
I also
real quick,
think
I didn't have a passion for making dashboards. You know, I think if you're like a passion for doing something like making clothes, making something, I don't know. If that's what you want to do, then yeah, I think there's a lot of people that want to do that. I don't think there's as many people that want to do something like a factory setting as we think. I think there are a lot, but
I think that just as many people don't want to make spreadsheets in a cubicle either. And I think that there would be just enough people there'd be some of those people that are sick and tired of concatenating data all day and putting it into, spreadsheets, are going to be like, you know what, actually, maybe I will go make a dash, or maybe I will go do whatever. And here's the other thing too, that people seem to have not noticed when we talked about onshoring and bringing back manufacturing. Like, manufacturing today is not even the same as manufacturing what it was in the 90s. Like, it's robotic, still in the 90s, and, you know, a lot of those processes are automated. But you could take all this quote unquote unskilled labor here in the United States, and you could teach people how to use artificial intelligence and manage those things. Like teach people how to manage SCADA, teach people how to get knowledgeable enough to operate a segment of a factory using artificial intelligence, which is absolutely going to be what's happening, and take all these people and teach an old dog new tricks and give them jobs that way. Like this isn't like Rosie the Riveter climbing up in the wing of a B-17 and hammering, rivets into the side of a wing anymore. Like there's a better way to do this. And I think that if you're going to onshore and bring back manufacturing jobs, that's how you explain it. Right? Like we need people who understand we need people who understand SCADA. We need people who understand how to, manage a seam. We need people who understand artificial intelligence and logistics, pathways and things like that, and computing in these factories because there's going to be people that are interested in that just as much as people, like I said before, who are sick and tired of making, spreadsheets made, just to say, well, you know what, fuck it. I'm sick of working for Butthole Corp, and I'm going to go and I'm going to make whatever widgets in this factory because it pays a wage that's similar or better or whatever, or, to maybe the trade-off is I'm taking a lesser wage for a job where I don't have to go and sit in a cubicle all day. I don't know. This is just, none of us know. I'm just like, trying to explain like my perspective on it. Yeah, spitball. Exactly. Yeah, but I think more people would be willing to do that. And there are already people who grew up watching their grandparents and parents lose their jobs because mills and factories closed in the United States. And like, I think that we forget about those people because they exist in a lot of these places like that we call the flyover states. Yeah. And I think that those people would be very willing to do certain things like that. And let's be real, bro. Like Mr. Starbucks LA isn't going to be the sort of person that they're hoping is going to work in a factory. It's going to be cornbread Nathan from fucking Kansas who they're going to hope is going to go do that. And that's exactly where they're going to build
I want to
that
see
shit.
TikTok dances on the factory floor. That's what I want.
No.
But hey man, if we could do it during COVID with people on ventilators dying by the droves, then yeah, let's do it.
I will say this, we've seen the hollowing out of the middle of America. Like, go look at Detroit, go look at Baltimore, go look at Kansas City, look at some of these places that used to be powerhouses, St. Louis, right? And they used to produce a lot of stuff back when manufacturing was big. Cincinnati, Ohio was big like that. And we've seen the hollowing out of these once great cities and how they're just in total and utter decay. And if we just... All I'm going to say is if we keep doing the same thing that we've been doing and going the same direction we're going, we're just going to get more of that product. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, at a certain point, things need to change. I don't know what it's going to look like, to your points, Brandon, or what the new manufacturing base would look like, or even, Justin, if you're right that, we're going back to, people just, hammering and making dashboards. I don't think it's going to look like that, but if we just keep going the same way we're going,
I don't think it's going to look like that. I definitely think it's going to be automated. China's already got what they call those dark factories where there's no people in it; it's just machines running.
Yeah,
I think it's going to be like jobs are going to be created for people to maintain those robots, build those robots. Other robots are going to build the robot. I mean, there are going to be things that can be done.
Robots.
I'm from Lafayette, Indiana, man. That's where there's a Subaru plant, a Cat plant. Hey. There's all kinds. They make Frito-Lay potato chips there. There's farming. There's all those things. So brother. It's I understand the factory workers, and I just know that to me always felt like a backup job. If everything else didn't kind of work out, at least there's that, because it is unskilled labor. I mean, there's some of it obviously takes skill. But doing stuff like what I did was literally standing in one spot or moving 3 steps at a time from one spot to this spot. You're just doing that. That's your flow all day long.
Let me ask you a question then. So let's talk about how perspectives change over time, right? So you said that at the time, I don't know what year this is. I don't want to assume. But you talked about how this was viewed as a backup job, right? How much, because of the offshoring of American jobs, do people view these stupid jobs in offices, and now everybody wants to remote work and all this other shit, right? The perspective that maybe that's the backup job now, right? like maybe because there isn't an option anymore and those jobs don't exist in the way that they used to, that perspective could be different if something like that were to come back to the United States in the manner in which it used to exist in the United States. I mean, what do you think about that?
In a world where everybody is a social media influencer.
That's right.
So hold on. Are you asking what I would think if the manufacturing jobs all came back and the kind of like digital jobs, work from home jobs, people were no longer interested in those?
Well, what I'm saying is you said that the factory jobs were like the backup jobs, that those
Yeah.
weren't the goal, right? So, and over the past however many years since you were doing that job, right? I think that the perspective has definitely switched because those jobs now exist in the minutia, whereas that maybe they were more prevalent back in the time period that you're talking about.
I'm talking,
right?
dude. I'm talking
so like
less
this
than 10
job
years
that
ago.
everybody.
When I was getting out of the Marine Corps, I was like, I'm gonna go try this crazy idea, and if it doesn't work out, well, I could probably go get a factory job if I need to. And I don't say that because it's like, that's a bottom of the barrel job or anything, but it is an easy job to get a lot of times for some places. Some places are hard to get onto. Some places you have to be like a temp worker for like 6 months, and then you get a probationary period. And there's definitely that too. But a lot of people I knew that lived back home were like, they can't even they're always hiring people for these jobs because they can't keep people in the jobs because people can't pass piss test, because they have to do it. Does Indiana? They got to do a piss test there. So they can't pass piss test, or they don't want to show up on time, or stuff like that. It's just like, I've never been under the impression that these jobs weren't readily available back from where I'm from, unless you have a pretty dicey, work history. And even guys that I knew that had pretty dicey work histories could get a factory job in some cases. And rebuild.
Got you. Yeah. I think two things here.
Hold on, real quick. I want to make
First,
it
what
clear
we're
that
talking
I
about.
don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think lesser of people that work in a factory. I did it.
100%.
I didn't.
Okay,
I
I
didn't
just want to
think
make sure that people understand that I'm not like talking down like those people. You stupid people.
blue-collar
I know
pieces
smart
of
people
shit.
that work there.
My brother works in the
Some
Tyson
people
chicken
just like
factory.
it. They don't.
You know what I mean?
You don't
Like-
have to think. A lot of
Yeah.
times you don't have to think. You just show up. You do your
Right.
job. You get paid. You go home. And that's.
Yeah, a lot of people like that. I just think you talked about those dark factories. I think that's the stupidest decision in American history was to offshore all of that and give it to another country. And this might sound like slightly racist, but like especially giving it to a country full of Asians who are just like innovate the way that they do because they do, right? And just look at how much they took what they were handed and turned it into something even fucking better, right? And to pretend that we are not going to have to play catch up in a lot of different ways is just stupid.
I don't know if it's
because we
racist.
are.
I don't know if it's
But I think
racist
this
to
is one of
say
the-
that they took it and made it better. I think that's actually a compliment.
No, but I think I was assigning an attribute of being innovative to Asians that some Asians may appreciate, and maybe some white women may find to be offensive. But anyway, I think that's one of the stupidest and biggest. Exactly, awfuls, affluent, white, female, ugly liberals. That I think that was one of the biggest mistakes in American history to do that, and
NAFTA,
it's definitely
right?
been
And that because of
will
NAFTA?
be. Yeah, NAFTA is another example of that. Yeah, NAFTA is probably one of the. That was like the nail in the coffin as far as my opinion goes, and then allowing China into the WTO. They've broken every fucking rule there is. The WTO hasn't enforced any sort of violation that the Chinese have committed since they entered the WTO, and so it's just like exactly like the stupidity why I don't understand why so many people are like now for the moment pro China in a weird way because they saw. Fucking Hong Kong lit up at night on fucking TikTok, and they think that that's somehow novel, I guess. But the other part of that, you think?
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was just gonna say the other part of it you hit on, I think, is the problem here, and it's that America has no work ethic. Americans don't have a work ethic anymore. I think most Americans are too comfortable in their creature comforts and the things that we need, quote unquote, to get by throughout our day. And, like you said, you have to keep hiring people because people can't pass piss tests. Well, okay, that's a problem in this country, right? There's an epidemic of drugs, and especially areas like Indiana and Ohio, right, having these huge drug epidemics. So it's just like the problem, and the real problem you're talking about is a problem with American culture and a problem with American ethics and morality. Like that is the undoing, right? When you go and you look back at like why like cultures fall apart, it's not because of all these mechanisms we're talking about. Like, yeah, these are just like parts of it, right? Like the offshoring of American manufacturing. That's just how it happened. It's not why, you know what I mean? And like the why is because people lost their sense of direction. They lost their sense of identity, and they started to, just like any other creature who gets too comfortable, first world society, you now have a generation of people who have never had to wonder where their next meal is going to come from, and they're not going to, right? And so why should I do anything if I'm being given everything? And that's how Americans behave. And unfortunately, just like anything else, some tragedy is going to happen before people realize, man, we had it really fucking good and now we don't, and now we have to work for it. It's the whole, good men make good times, good times make soft men, that whole fucking trope that everybody said 6,000 times.
I think there is definitely a segment of society that is like that. That is very much like entitled. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're living in the best time of ever. I always say we're living in the future. Where you're literally, I can ask my phone something. I can have food delivered to my house. I can have on-demand entertainment. I can do. It's such a different world than humans had 100 years ago. But I will also say that the people that are driven, I think in America, the people that are driven show exceptional drive. You know what I'm saying? Like the ones that are out there making things happen are hardcore. And I don't think a lot of other countries wouldn't. You're not going to find that kind of work ethic because. Yeah, in like Europe, like afternoons, lazy afternoon kind of deal. We're going to take a couple hours off for lunch, 3 hours off for lunch, and then come back and things like that. It's all that kind of deal. I mean, I just think that American ingenuity and innovation is, top tier. And we do have some shit bags, 10%, right? There's always that bottom 10%, so.
Brandon, while you were saying all that, it sparked a memory in my mind about the mouse experiment. So I pulled this up in the background. I have a really cool little quick breakdown. 25? But it was John Calhoun's Universe 25 experiment. No. Justin, have you ever heard about this? So he took a group of mice and he put them in basically like a utopia. So there were zero predators. They had all the food, all the water, all the comforts that they could ever possibly want. And so here's like a really quick breakdown of his findings. There was initial population growth where they thrived and grew rapidly. Then all of a sudden behavioral sink they started noticing as the population increased and the environment became crowded. Social interactions began to break down, leading to aggression, cannibalism, and a lack of parental care. Then in the midst of all of this social chaos, a distinctive group of mice emerged, exhibiting unique set of behaviors. They titled these ones the beautiful ones. So these beautiful ones were solitary, engaging primarily in grooming and self-care, and they rarely interacted with any of the other mice. Then there was loss of social roles. They also displayed a lack of interest in mating or raising offspring, effectively losing their social roles altogether. Even though they had a pristine appearance about them, it was shortly after that the population began to decline. And then other mice in the experiment declined in numbers and eventually went extinct altogether. And then because the beautiful ones were the ones that were left apart from society and had no care to mate or raise offspring, then they eventually died out, and basically the entire colony died. And this entire time they had all the food, all the water, all the bedding, everything it was right there in their environment.
Too good to be true,
and yet they still died out.
It's all too good to be true.
Well, here's the fun part about that experiment is that those mice existed in a silo, right? And the United States doesn't exist in a silo. So what happens? Just like any other culture, it gets infiltrated with other people that are willing to do the work, and the first world soft culture that existed on top, the cream at the top, is going to eventually be replaced by the people who do move in. If there were other mice if they let them into this enclosure or whatever these mice were into, those mice would have become the mice that became the new culture and became the new civilization of mice. And that's basically what happens, man. Like, this is like we talked about when we talked about Universe 25 the other night with Dan Holloway, and we also talked about this too, about how like Rome went and conquered Gaul and brought back all these slaves, and now had an entire slave class of people that eroded the middle class of Rome. And eventually they became so overpopulated with invaders like the Visigoths, the Ostrogoths, and eventually in 411, Alaric the Visigoth led a group of them into Rome and sacked it and conquered the city, right? Yeah. And this is just it's a product of becoming too soft. It's a product of watching your working class go away, and eventually somebody will show up and slice a better cheddar, not to talk about mice like that, but I'm just saying, like, that's the natural course of events. Like, there's no such thing as true isolationism and humans, the way that those mice existed in that controlled experiment, and they're just sort of witnessing these things. Like, that is natural. I think that's just, unfortunately, is what happens, and it brings up the whole. I'll just ask you the question, Justin, that I asked Dan the other night about, like, do you think you can manage your way out of decline, or is having conversations like this just a coping mechanism so you don't feel complicit in the decline of your civilization?
No, I think we can. Define decline. Like, what are we talking about? Are we talking about
what we're witnessing right now is decline?
Maybe. I don't know.
I would argue it is. It's
in what?
Certainly
decline
not.
In what?
Okay, well,
that's my thing. It's like it's a very general term. Like, is all humanity declining?
Mm-hmm.
No. I think medical innovation's improving.
I mean, American decline.
Like America,
that's what
I don't
mean.
think America's declining
decline.
though. I mean, we may not be like as motivated as we used to be, but there's no doubt that we're still the powerhouse of the world. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I would say, just like anything else, right? It's a roller coaster, right? I think that we are, and I'll flesh this out, and I would love to be disabused of the notion, Justin, should you feel the need, that we are on a downward slope, okay? Our infrastructure sucks. Bridges fall apart. Roads aren't being repaired. We have a massive drug and homeless epidemic in this country. Education is absolutely balls. The military has serious issues when it comes to standards. I mean, I've seen it firsthand. Chris is living it right now because he's still active duty. Disclaimer, nobody on this podcast represents the DoD, especially Chris. And yeah,
I was waiting for that.
Gotta get that in
I
there.
didn't know if you were still in yet, so I wasn't sure I was going to bring it up.
The United States is not the clear-cut lead and the most cutting-edge technology that the world is looking at right now. When I say that, I mean AI and quantum computing. Like, there's not this massive gap.
Well, who outdoes us in AI and quantum computing?
France and China. And there's the dark horse that people don't talk about enough.
France is more advanced than people realize. China, I think China is giving us. China lied about DeepSeek or whatever that. Yeah, I don't think they're as advanced as we're letting. Or I don't know, man. I'd say it's neck and neck. I don't know.
The Nvidia. So though that's what you're making the point I'm making. Right?
Can I put 3 stats on top of you, Brandon, and then you can jump back into your question? But when you talk about decline, there was over 100 million members of the boomer generation. There was only 72 million or so, give or take, in the millennial generation. There's only like 45 million members of Generation Alpha. Right now. So that's an obvious population decline. We're only at 1.6 birth rate, which is not at replacement. And then also American health. We are one of the most unhealthy countries in the world.
But to your point, Justin, that's exactly what I'm saying. Like in the 90s, there wasn't a country that had anywhere near close to being on par with us militarily or technologically, right? And that gap has closed up in a lot of different ways. And I'm not saying China is more advanced than us in every frontier, but that gap, that margin that we're talking about, what I was getting at, is not so indistinguishably American anymore, right? Like you just said, like you think we're neck and neck.
Well,
like,
yeah,
that's
but this
a
is an
problem,
emerging
right?
technology.
Like if you're,
I mean, how can you? I mean, this is something brand new that everybody's figuring.
I mean,
out.
is it correct? It is something brand new that everybody's figuring out, but there have been technologies that were brand new that everybody was figuring out and dealing with, like the computer when that came out and was made worldwide available in the 1990s, and there were still not international corporations that were meeting the same standard that American companies were, right? But here we are. We have companies and this is like an IP, intellectual property, conversation that we could have, like whatever it is. If we're talking like NIST or GDPR or CISA or whatever, but like when we can have that conversation, but it's not so indistinguishably American anymore. Not even just AI or quantum computing, right? Like the fact in China and just like every other civilization has built its new civilization off the backs of the old one, right? Rome did it to the Greeks, we say like, oh, they stole our tech. Well, it's like, well, that's what every new civilization does. They stole the tech of the last one and made it better, made it different, And I think that those gaps closing and the way that America projects power and the fact that they're not so wide anymore, I think is evidence of decline. And I think that obviously, there's the reasons why that is. The GWAT is one of those reasons. The military industrial complex and how money just fleeces pockets rather than going to actually developing these things they're supposed to, like the replacement for the either the Columbia, I think the Columbia class submarine is replacing the Ohio class submarine. Like the project for that started I think 2017, and now it's already twice the amount of the originally estimated budget, and they haven't churned out submarines like they were supposed to. Like I think that's an evidence of decline. So much bureaucracy that you can't even do anything. You've got analysis paralysis everywhere, and people that don't care to be productive, they care to just make money. I think that all of that is evidence of decline. Not necessarily the money thing, because people are always trying to make money, right? But the fact that you can't get anything done is evidence of decline. And it didn't
honestly,
used to be
man,
that way.
I disagree with not a lot. I mean, I disagree with some of that. I mean, there's a lot of evidence of decline, if you will. I mean, if you want to look at basically anything, you can say it's evidence of decline. But, I mean, one thing, like, we talk about infrastructure. Yeah, our infrastructure could be better, but our infrastructure is way better than almost every country I've been to. There aren't bridges just falling down. There are bridges that have fallen down. There are bridges that have been damaged. There are things that need to be improved. But overall, I think we do a pretty good job. And a lot of that's on the state level. So every state is different. So, there's that. I mean, I don't know. I think we're adapting. I think the world is changing. We were so far ahead because of the Industrial Revolution and being able to come up with all this, all the things that we did. And but once that all these technologies and everything that we came up with, other countries came up with, all those things kind of spread around. That's why everything's kind of closing gaps and evening out. That's one of the reasons, is because it's not,
I would say that's decline,
not necessarily. Why?
Because
we're living longer than we ever have.
Well,
we're healthier than we've ever been.
Okay. I mean, there's that.
Well, that's
sure.
not true.
Define. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say
like,
my evidence is that we're living longer than we've ever have. We can say, yeah, we're overweight. There's a lot of us out here that are overweight, but at the same time, we're still living longer than we ever have.
I mean, I think that's evidence of modern medicine and the success of science. Like, I agree with sure, but back to the decline piece, right? Sticking with let's just stick with tech and military. I don't think it's just the natural course of events. I mean, maybe it is the natural course of events because that's just what happens. But I don't think it's as benign, I guess, if you are going to look at this through a pro-America stance, that the world has closed the military advancement edge that America used to have. I remember reading something a while back about the next closest country to catching up the United States was still decades behind the way that we were innovating innovating and creating new tech, especially in the military space, right? But like through like intellectual property theft and espionage and people being pieces of shit, Americans, the Chinese have caught up, and we were stuck in a war for 20 years.
Though. I mean, even
right?
though they have their
I think they're. When I say caught up, I don't mean equal, right? I mean that the gap that we used to enjoy between us and them has significantly closed, and that is evidence of decline. If you just like you,
I disagree, man.
I mean, like, look,
all things being equal, the average lifespan of Americans has decreased from 78.8 years in 2019 to now 77.5 years.
Well, I'll put it this way, dude.
77.5 years. But it has that was but it did increase again up to 77.5 from 2022. So it is back
COVID
rising
brought
again,
us down.
so you're still partially correct. That is what
that's what it was. It was
actually,
COVID.
Would you?
Yeah, I remember reading that stat before. Yeah.
No, I believe that.
It was the first decrease in like lifespan in a long time. Go ahead, sorry.
It was, yeah.
No, you're good. That's really interesting. Are you comfortable with the technological gap being as narrow as it is between the United States and the Chinese?
I mean, I don't know. I mean, is it
than where you were maybe 20 years
part
ago?
of the problem is that I would be assuming. I've never been to China. I don't even know where they are technology wise. I hear a lot of news, and do I trust what's coming through the news? Maybe, like maybe some, maybe not. I think China has way more problems, but no one knows about them because they're such a closed society that you don't hear the impact right now that they're having, like tariffs are having on their country, and how right now there's millions of jobs at stake, and there's there's thousands, I think, maybe if not thousands, hundreds or thousands of factories that are closed right now that they've declared a holiday, and it's actually because they're trying to stop production because they don't need it. I mean,
well, earlier you were defending yourself with your, I don't remember what it was you were saying, like, oh yeah, you don't think blue collar workers are pieces of shit, so I'm going to quantify myself real fast here and say that I don't think China is beating the United States on every front. I also don't think China is without problems. I mean, Chris and I talk about this on our show all the time about how China has all these problems. We have had people come on to flesh those out, the problems that China has. All I'm saying is that the fact that the United States has let that gap close, I think, is evidence of decline. And I don't think it necessarily means permanent decline, but I also know that that is not a good thing. That's not a net positive at the end of the day, right? To let a country who's so obviously, and states they see you as an enemy, to close any gap on you would not be something you'd put in the positive column if you were going to break those situations. That's all I was saying. Like, I know China has a ton of fucking problems, and I don't think that they're this amazing fucking country. But I also am not going to underestimate.
I don't know. I don't think their military is what everyone thinks it is. I think they're kind of like,
I don't either.
The whole time I was in the Marines, and not the whole time, but while you're in the military, people talked about Russia. Wow, they have these tanks, and they have certain sensors on them, and they have this weapon system, and these guys are pretty legit. And then we see them going to Ukraine and really just fucking shit the bed. Like, hey guys, PMs, Monday PMs. You got to get to the motor pool and start checking those tires so they don't fucking blow up on you when you're trying to invade a country.
I said that in an episode. I was like, dude, if you're buying winterized tires from North Korea,
so I think China is similar to that, where we put them on a high pedestal, partly to justify our need for such an advanced and large sized military. But I think it's also cool to experiment with new stuff. I think that's part of it. But I don't know, man. I don't think we're in decline. I think we're
we're in a slump.
Yeah, I mean, ups and downs, right? We're gonna have ups and downs. I think the last 4 years mostly we're down. I mean, I hate to be that guy, and I know a lot of people probably agree with me, but it was just I felt like I felt like no one gave a fuck about Americans, like, and the government. That's what it felt like. They were caring about everybody except for like the average, like everyday tax-paying American. Hey, we're going to get like drugs and we're going to get needles for the fucking homeless people and stuff like that. Hey, we're going to get like housing and free food and free medical for like illegal immigrants and stuff like that. And hey, we're going to get this for this, and then it's like, but the average everyday American going and working in a factory job or something like that, they're not getting those handouts. They make a little bit too much to get a handout. One, if they even wanted to, a lot of people don't want handouts, you know what I'm saying? But I just feel like the last 4 years was so bad. No, I think right now we're probably in a pretty good spot. I don't like what Trump is doing with his trade war stuff. I think he did a little haphazardly. I think at the end of the day, if he comes through with all these deals they keep saying that they're going to have, I think that would be great and it'd be awesome. If not, and we keep these tariffs on, then he needs to do some kind of major tax cut because he can't have both. It should be one or the other. I think that was the whole plan. I don't know, man. I just think I'm more positive. I think that we have such great innovation. I think we bring in smart people. I think we allow smart people to think freely. I think, you don't get that in China. You have to toe the party line. This works. Like North Korea. Yeah, sure, it'll work. Yeah.
Anything you make, I made this.
It's just
right?
We.
I'm very much positive though. I'm very much like everything's, you have to be positive. Yeah, there are negatives that can be pulled, and that's the other thing too. Is our bias is that we're here in America, so it's very easy to look around and go, "Look at that, it's fucked up. Look at that. I can't believe this. They got rid of parking and put in bike lanes. Those sons of bitches." Like those kinds of things.
Oh, please get me started.
I'm just mad because it keeps happening here in San Diego. Those sorts of things, like we see that every day, so we don't see the like. Do you have any Chinese news sources? Like actually from China, not like BBC China, or something like that.
So I use Ground News, which I can't recommend highly enough. And yeah, it will pull Chinese news sources and it'll tell you like it's factual, it's accuracy. It's like mixed factuality or high factuality or whatever. And it shows you news. It doesn't matter. Like I saw one time, it was like the Ugandan news. I'm like, Jesus, it was a high factuality article, so, but yeah, like it will give
that's
you
good.
Chinese
because a lot of people aren't looking at other sources, so it's like
right.
One time I had a guy from the Marine Corps Times reach out to me about an article about the artillery community. I can't remember what it was about exactly. And I was kind of in the artillery community because I was an observer. So when he called me, he was asking me these questions like that gunners would know. And I was kind of explaining like they have their own kind of culture, they fight among the guns or like that kind of deal. And we're, that wasn't really my thing. And then I read the article and he like misquoted me so much, and I was just like, what the fuck? I was
Stolen
like, yeah,
valor.
he made it sound like I was like, yeah, me and the boys are out here. Like, I'm like, what? But
yeah, right, dude.
That right there is that's a perfect example of I have a direct piece of evidence of someone taking I said and put it in a newspaper and it being wrong. How often does that happen? There's a term for what I'm describing as well. I don't remember what it is. No, it's not yellow journalism. It's where you read something that you are very familiar with in a newspaper and
the Gell-Mann
is that what it is?
Effect.
Correct.
Yeah, it's where you go in and you go, hey, this is something I'm super familiar with, and you read the article, and this is all bullshit. What is this? And then you go to the next article, and it's about something you're not familiar with, and you're like, and you believe everything that they're saying, and that's the deal. Like,
yeah.
How much information are we getting that's unfiltered? I think we're doing pretty good. I think it makes some people. The bad thing is that us not doing well is good for politics for whatever group is not in office, and that's and it gets amplified that way, and everyone's like, I can't believe the downfall of democracy is happening, and blah, and all this, and it's on both sides. It's not just Dems or Republicans. It's on both sides. And I just don't buy into it, man. I don't buy into the fatalism of it, of the like, this is the end of the world. I think things need to get better. I think there are things that should improve, but man, there is no other time in the world I'd want to live than right now. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I don't disagree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Sure.
I think that first and foremost, I think that we are, like, as a country, I think we're in a slump in certain ways because we've come out of like the 20 years of the global war on terror. But I agree with you. The thing that I think you said was super important is that, you can innovate freely here in the United States. And you can't do that in China. Which is why I think that, always United States will have an advantage over the Chinese. It's just like the history on any dictator, eventually they will fuck it up because you cannot have a single point of failure in anything, right? And if you are a dictator, you are the single point of failure, right? And how the future of your dictatorship, the outlook of the future of your dictatorship, right? So I do believe a lot more in Americans, I think, than a lot of people do, I suppose, who are chronically online, I guess. But I choose to be, I'll say it like this. I choose to be critical because I don't believe in I think one of the worst things you can say to somebody who needs to change is that they're good the way they are. I think that's one of the stupidest things you could say to somebody. And I believe in being critical because it will reach the right audience, and it will reach the people who will hear it and recognize that the criticism is warranted. And I think too that it'll reach the people who have the fortitude and integrity to recognize that they need to change. Because if you are not competent and you don't have the integrity to recognize that criticism of you and your incompetence, then you deserve exactly what's coming to you. And I think that being critical in the way that I try to be, even if it does come off pessimistic, I think I try to use it as a forcing function and a driving force. That's the way if that summarizes my takes on
Hey,
this
you have to be
sufficiently.
critical to get better, right? And I think we would be in a decline if you could no longer criticize what's happening. That's a decline. When you can't have free expression.
Do you mean like?
And you can't,
Oh, okay.
the UK's in a decline. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Agreed.
Oh, yeah.
they can't even post their own thoughts without getting possibly rolled up in jail. They have thousands of, like you said earlier, they have thousands of people in jail for memes and stuff like that, for Facebook. And,
The real
yeah,
more
so
victims.
I don't know. But again, I'm pretty positive. The thing I've learned about politics and world politics, geopolitics, whatever, you never know what the fuck is going to happen, man. Like, we could think we have China figured out, and Xi Jinping could die tomorrow of a fucking heart attack. And then what happens? Who's up after him? Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Or Vladimir Putin gets killed by maybe an insider threat. Maybe someone in Russia that's tired of him doing stuff. What happens in Russia then? Now what?
They keep trying.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like when you don't think, like, you're like, oh, I got this figured out. There's always something that comes out of left field. Like, boom, gotcha.
You're not wrong.
It's like...
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, you're right, dude.
Oh, man, that was the biggest softball. Got me. Dude, COVID was so jacked up. Let's end on this. But, COVID was so messed up. At the very beginning of it, I was extremely worried. I was like, holy shit, we're talking about a virus?
A lot of
I was like, man, we're wiping
justifiably,
stuff down in the house. Like, I was like, literally, like, once a day, I was like, all right, wipe all the handles off, wipe everything down. I kind of got back into this. When I was on ship, we had what's called the Double Dragon, where you both vomit and shit at the same time. It's what happens to a lot of cruise ships. I can't remember what the name of the virus is, but it's like a viral infection. It goes. So I was like, well, on ship we had to wipe it. It doesn't work, but it makes everyone feel better. So like wipe everything down. And I was doing that, and I remember when they were talking about.
It's true.
I remember when they were talking about coming up with a vaccine. And they were like, yeah, we're going to start looking for volunteers for this vaccine. And, dude, for a minute, I considered volunteering. You know what's crazy? Because I was like, you know what? I'm younger. I'm healthy. Like, they're not going to give me something crazy. It's not like they're going to inject some fucking crazy shit in me. Right. And then now I'm like looking back. I'm like, man, I'm glad I didn't fucking volunteer for that. the fuck was I
Right.
thinking? But at the time, it was such a huge deal.
Right.
I was sitting there like, man, like this is one of those times like people need to step up for the country kind of deal. You know, someone's got to do it, right? And therefore, literally for a minute, I was like, I could volunteer for this. You know, this isn't. And yeah, that was my fucking COVID, dude. What a mess. What a mess that was.
Bro,
It was a mess.
I agree, dude. I had a pretty unique experience with COVID because I was in Germany when it happened, and we locked down, and the Germans always say they did exactly what you'd expect Germans to do in any sort of situation where they need to control a population, but it was stupid to me because I was a cop and I had to interact with the members of a city every day. I was on shift for 12 hours a day. And it's just like, why the hell am I wearing a mask anywhere?
That stuff got stupid.
And like I saw this, and like you remember too, like a lot of the early footage, there was even video of people in China that were collapsing in the street and shit. And I was like, oh my God, dude, like what the fuck is going on, right? Right. And and then I saw like Italy got hit really, really hard. You may remember. And there were all these people dying in the hospital in Italy. It's like, oh shit, this is like serious, And so, and being in Germany, like Italy's not that far away. Europe is not as big as some people think it is. And I'm just like, well, fuck. Like, what is this shit, And, after a while, like, and then like my angst about the situation, I think like maybe not give a fuck anymore. And then like 2 weeks into it, I had to pull somebody out of a porta potty and had human waste on me. And I was like, well, this is over. Oh yeah. I was like, if I'm getting COVID, dude, and like, there's a terrible story actually about a soldier who died of COVID on a fucking sidewalk, and CID couldn't figure out what the fuck to do because there was no protocol for a pandemic, and the Germans, like creepos they're called, they didn't want to fucking touch it either, so they put a tent over this guy on the sidewalk with his wife sitting there holding his dead body for like 4 hours, bro. And it was just like that to me. Like when I think about COVID and I think about my experience, I think about situations like that where like people just had no idea about what the fuck to do. And like it's so natural to like put yourself in, like what you said, you're like, well, we got to do this like to get out of this. It's kind of like you got to walk into the storm to get out the other side quick enough, quicker. Right. And I think a lot of people, and I think that's I think that's an honorable way to look at situations like that, but it also gives way too much grace to the people in charge, like you said, right? Like, oh, well, this is fine. Go get this experimental vaccine that, by the way, President Trump, through Operation Warp Speed, got out onto the streets a hell of a lot quicker, pretty fast, right? Go get a vaccine and get a hamburger and fries, right? Like all this crap, and when we've come out and realized like there was no science to the 6 foot thing. Fauci wanted to, all this shit, and it's just like, we'll go to show you that when the shit hits the fan, absolutely no one has any fucking clue what to do. And most people are just trying their best at the end of the day. And there's always going to be bad actors like there were during COVID. The Chinese wouldn't tell anybody what the fuck was going on. They hid the information about where it came from. It still, to some people, doesn't occur to them that maybe the coronavirus came out of the novel coronavirus lab in Wuhan, right, where this started. So it's just crazy to me. Like, people are going to people, dude, is all I'm saying. And there's going to be chaos, especially with situations like that.
Dude, this is how insane the human race went during COVID. And I remember when this article dropped. This is 2021, so this is like on heading toward the back side of it, right? But there was this brothel in Austria that was offering free sessions. Free sex for people who would come and get vaccinated. So come and get vaccinated for COVID, but leave with chlamydia. You know what I mean? Like this is
one of these things is treatable with antibiotics. You know what I mean?
But the problem with COVID, because you guys are absolutely right. Like in the beginning, nobody knew what to do with it. But it's like if you go back and you watch movies like Outbreak, right, or any movie that's about UFOs ever, like what's the prevailing wisdom, right? Is like, hey, we need to get a handle on this, figure out what we're dealing with. Let's not incite panic in the larger population because that's going to cause bigger problems. They took like all of that basic conventional wisdom because COVID became politically expedient heading into that election cycle, and they fanned it into the problem. Like CNN was running the death toll every day on the news site to just keep that panic.
What did Biden say about like the dark winter, like the unvaccinated, the death winter of the unvaccinated or some shit?
Yeah,
like,
I think that's one thing that COVID proved was that humans can't even come together for something like that without it becoming political. Anybody that had their eyes open were paying attention during that whole time saw the politics of it and was just like, I couldn't believe it. I was like, this is crazy. And what was crazy is how many people were so out of the loop and just not caring, not paying attention. It's like, bro, this is at this point we're literally affecting our lives. Like we can't leave our places. What are you talking about? I can't go to the store. Or, like... Well, anyways, man, I gotta end it there.
Biden said...
We're gonna end it there.
All right.
Yeah, we could do this
on that death note.
Keep going. Have you guys ever listened to the Stranger by the Hour podcast? I think you guys would get along with those dudes.
I haven't.
It's two former MARSOC guys. One was they both did like EOD sniper, like did different things, and then they worked for for SOCOM as contractors, and now they have the podcast Stranger by the Hour. They've been on this show a few times, and they go deep into like conspiracies and like not that you guys are conspiracy theorists or anything, but fun. Like.
Hey, that's not a bad word.
Yeah. The research. It's funny though. It's just like I think you guys would like them. I think you guys should talk to them. Maybe you guys should get on each other's podcast because
Stranger by the Hour.
Yeah, Cody and Aaron. Those are both good dudes. Check those guys out. But where can people find your guys' show? Tell us.
Dude, I always tell people to go to Rumble first because we have had so much success over there, and that's because of Rumble's platform and not censoring people, right? So go find us on Rumble first. If you don't have a Rumble account, go make one. There's a lot of good shows on Rumble anyway. But we're also on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and we also have a social media presence as well on Instagram primarily. You can go follow us over there where I put a lot of short form content, like pull reels from our episodes. We do a lot of, like guy on the phone videos too, So yeah, go follow us on one of those platforms, man. Help us out. I would appreciate it for sure. And you can check out our merch store and the sponsors on any of the show notes from our episodes, Red Pill Threads for the merch. My favorite shirt is definitely the Teddy Roosevelt Brutal American that we got on there. And you can also go check out all the other homies over at the Dear America Network as well that we're a part of. So if you're familiar with Dear America, maybe Graham Allen, Todd Spears, Maggie Moo, all those awesome folks, Chad Prather over there on Dear America, you can go check them out.
That's awesome.
Too, so.
That's awesome. Well, everybody check out my stuff. JKramerGraphics.com is my website. Former Action Guys, Former Action News is my Instagram. And that's it, gentlemen. I really appreciate you guys coming on.
Thanks, bro.
Thanks for having us
on.
Man.
Fun talking to you, man.
That's it, dudes.